So we'll quickly move to the next important writer of this, restoration comedy of humor, Congreve, William Congreve. So he is of refined wit. You can say that it is with him we now step out of bedroom and enter into the drawing room. So that is how the place of William Congreve welcome us. So if Wycherley shocks your body, actually Congreve engages your mind. That is the difference. The Way of the World, very famous work by him. The real battlefield is not the bed here in this story. The real battlefield is not the bed like Wycherley's place, but here in Way of the World, what we have as the battlefield is inheritance, consent, reputation, and marriage, sort of contracts you can say. The very famous scene in this play, Milament tells Mirabel, "Don't control me, don't own me, or don't invade my privacy." And Mirabel, in fact, agrees, and suddenly marriage becomes a treaty between equals, not a trap. So that is the important takeaway. You can consider this particular thing what I have just told you in the form of a dialogue, which happens between important characters, two characters, Milament and Mirabel. It can be an indication or a trailblazer for early feminism, that starting point of early feminism, you can say, because it is a kind of a treaty. It becomes a treaty between equals, and it's no longer, the marriage is no longer a conspiracy or a trap where one exploits the other. So we see here polished dialogue dominating the stage or the script. And this is the core of the story. You can leisurely go through it. And the gist of what I have just told you, personal freedom is demanded through that dialogue. Early argument for equality in marriage, as I told you, can be the sign of early feminism, and marriage is not a trap. So there is one more writer, George Itag, refines the rake figure. So that rake figure, who is raw and sexy and seductive, undergoes a transformation in his hands. So here he gets some sort of refined, personality in his place. Fashion and reputation dominate than the actual sexuality. Style replaces moral depth. So this is another minor, playwright, you can say, you can afford to ignore. So at some point of time, this in fact thrived under the reign of Charles II, because he was openly promiscuous, adulterous, you can say, had relationships outside marriage. He had sexual encounters with many, and the religion was no longer is the core of the administration, nor in even the society it held in any significance. Court sets tone of sexual freedom, because when the king himself is openly promiscuous, encouraging all that sexual adventures, it just relaxes the atmosphere. So that is why court is setting the tone of sexual freedom. Vice, antonym of virtue, is treated as entertainment. I told you, vices and virtues. So opposite of virtues. So adultery is a vice. So that is actually celebrated or treated as entertaining thing, instead of something to be reproached or condemned. But at some point, later stage, the decline of comedy of manners happens. The middle class audience rise. The reason for decline of comedy of manners is middle class. The audience usually were elite, class of people in the beginning, but gradually it begins to accommodate middle class people also. So that was the reason, and the equations changed, and they demand, for moral reform. Satire, appears immoral now, because you have middle class people who were leaning more on Puritan idealism, you can say. So there was an insistence on keeping the performances morally kind of acceptable. So when you make satire or write satire on immoral things or project adultery as an entertaining object, they had their objection. So that was the time we see the shift to sentimental comedy. So what was sentimental comedy? It was about uh, promoting virtue and reform in place of kind of satire on adultery and helpless husbands like colds rewards moral goodness. So it is an old way, you can say. It is another form of restoration in different sense. The moralistic world of Puritan time was just brought back again. There was a leaning, though the comedy, the essential aspects of comedy were retained, but it had these, concepts inversed or reversed. So emotional appeal replaces sexual satire in sentimental comedies. So now we step into restoration poetry. So while comedy dances in scandals, Dryden sharpens satire in his verse. So Dryden in fact dominates this particular world of restoration poetry. He is a towering personality figure and known for his usage of or perfecting this particular poetry, from heroic couplet, political heroic couplet. I told you the if the entire epic, because he writes a mock epic, in fact, called Macfleck, no, John Dryden. So if the entire poetry itself, is written in iambic pentameter and couplet, that becomes a heroic couplet. So political and literary satire, that is what he produced. These were the examples of diaries, some prose produced during Restoration period, though not very important from the point of view of NET examination because they were not paid attention to or not really focused. But it gave way to the rise of journalism.